right. Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to have you participate today. I'm very excited, and I'm also honored that I get to have a chance to ask Chuck and Nathan some questions about their program today. And so my intention is to shine some light into their data challenges, the solutions that they provided. But really, just to start, I'm going to ask the gentleman to give a little bit of background and an overview so we can sort of introduce the program itself to the group. Gentlemen, you want to give a little bit about the program?
Absolutely. So at the Defense Information Systems Agency, I work in DoD Readiness and Security Inspections, and in DRSI, as we call it. The mission is to conduct assessments or cyber assessments and inspections for the entities in DoD, and that ranges from the cybersecurity service providers as well as the public key infrastructure audits and the command cyber readiness inspections. We also are pivoting that to a more pen test-like mission vulnerability and threat focused inspections that tie into operational readiness of cyber defenders, and that's the command cyber operational readiness inspection. So we work in this area that receives all of this cyber inspection data, and we're trying to establish context for that. And this organizational mission, as well as the challenges inside DISA, has recently had several reorganizations. So the data, when we sort of came into the organization, is very siloed, extremely siloed between different technologies, between different organizational barriers, geographic boundaries. And so we really had to take a really fresh and deep look at it. And so myself and Nate here working in DRSI, we had to establish a better way to deal with that and also a better way to deal with the change. So we were part of a pilot program. We helped establish a pilot program. And essentially the timeline for this is in 2014 there was some reorganizations and some organizational change. And in 2015 and 16 we were going through some of the growing pains seeing the siloed data all over the place. And so in 2016 we started this pilot program. And in 2017, the beginning of fiscal year 2017, we accepted the pilot as an operational capability and we're moving it forward. So that's our background. And so the pilot program, we opted to use a NoSQL MarkLogic solution. Well, this is very different than what had been done in the past. So for us, it was definitely reaching out, different mechanism, different way to deal with it. And the many data types, but when I talked about it being very siloed, it really impacted the processes, right? So the processes, the more siloed we became, the more redundant data was throughout the organization. So that sort of was a vicious cycle for us.
Great, okay. So one of the ideas about previous challenges that you might have faced during your program with the silos of data, maybe quantities, validation, what other challenges have you faced with these silos?
Yeah, so with data, we face challenges in volume, velocity, and variety. With the volume, a single inspection might have anywhere from 70,000 individual data lines all the way to 1 million. And that's before we bring in open source data like NIST and the Vulnerability National Database and any other DoD or commercial tools that map information. So we needed to map all these data sources and integrate them and check them for quality and consistency because they were siloed for each inspection, and that was delaying the amount of time before it was ready to be used for decision making, and it would take anywhere from 1 to 5 days per inspection.
Okay. So when you mentioned the taking time to come up with the decision, what decisions now can be supported from the data now that it is aggregated?
So now really the key here is availability, because before we were sitting on this data iceberg and we really only had the top of the iceberg. So all of our effort, we'd spend 80% of our effort aggregating our data and getting everything together, and then we'd spend 20% of the time actually performing analysis. So what's key here is the effort to remove the silos. We've been able to flip that. We reversed that trend. So we spend less than 20% of our time actually doing anything with our data, and we spend 80% of our time doing the analysis. And so we were able to, by doing that, we were removing overhead from this, and we're able to focus on, it's great we have standard ad hoc reporting, but now we're moving into the trends of having more predictive analysis mechanisms and forecasting, setting up alerts, different things that are bringing context to the information and greater insight. And really it's about getting a 360-degree view of our data. We had it before. We just didn't have it in the right place, or we had summarizations, we had aggregations of data that really didn't offer the context. And then it was difficult to tag our data so that we could see it a different way. And as Nate had just mentioned, we have all these different opportunities. We can tag it by the NIST cybersecurity functions. We can tag it by NIST controls. We can really tag it by anything that we need, any defense in depth, layered defense, or different ways. And we also bring in the data fields themselves. And so we were able to get a lot of context out of that and offer a better analysis product. So really, for us, it's able to identify those possible trends very early. It's able to answer those questions that really support decision support within the mission context that we have. And so really what we're offering is to feed our decision makers and our leaders good information for making excellent choices, and really identify where the department needs to spend resources wisely, limited resources wisely, to support cybersecurity.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on who the consumers of your product is based on the program?
Oh, absolutely. So our consumers include, first and foremost, is U.S. Cyber Command is a main consumer, as well as Joint Force Headquarters, DODN. And so we conduct inspections through the operational authority, through JFHQ DODN, and that's delegated to DISA with the inspection schedule. And so we conduct inspections, and basically all of our assessments follow a set pattern, whereas the threat intelligence and information is used to select an inspection site. Then we plan the inspection, we scope the inspection, we conduct the assessments, and then post-inspection, that's when we have analysis. And then we aggregate all these inspection documents or artifacts and pieces, data sets. That includes vulnerability data, scanning data from commercial products. It includes configurations. It includes pen test report type items. It could include enumeration data. So we're really anything that's a cybersecurity data, as well as potentially even sensor data. We're looking at now bringing in sensor data with the inspections. So really everything's on the table. And so we're really moving towards the future direction with that. And so the items of value, we're given the analysis not only for DRSI, but our main consumer being U.S. Cyber Command and JFHQ DODN, and that affects decisions that support the direction of governance, policy, resources, perhaps even new technologies, or continued investment in existing ones. And so really just we're there to show them the pulse of the DoD information networks. So we're measuring the pulse of the patient. We're identifying risk both at the site level, as well as the risk that site gives the entire DoDN as well. And so hence JFHQ DoDN is very in tune to the analysis products to try to determine the different risk that's introduced to the DoD information networks, as well as U.S. Cyber Command through their mission.
Great, thank you. What are some of the lessons learned that you've found by removing these silos of data, and how are you currently addressing the challenge to wrangle the speed of change and the variety of data?
Yeah, so one of the lessons that we learned was that when we had all these data silos and we were manually aggregating the information, kind of bucketing it all together from one silo to another, we were only pulling out certain pieces of information that we thought were key indicators for trends and analysis. But in effect, it created a data firewall. We weren't able to analyze the data directly. And once we started to do that, we found correlations in unexpected places. One example, the first thing that was an example of this is I took the rank of the senior leader that was outbriefed on these high-level inspections and checked to see if there was a correlation with the success of their defensive posture. And there was, sure enough, there was a hockey stick all the way up to the 4-star general. But it's not something we would have thought about looking at. And so the biggest factor in getting there and dealing with the diverse data sets from all the different tools, from configurations to vulnerability to enumerating and mission data and the open standards. We really had to get it all in one place so that we could get at it in all the different dynamic ways with tagging and association. And to do that, we chose to do it outside of MarkLogic first. I took a PowerShell script to automate the integration and the validation and the corrections from all these data sources to create a single document so that the all million lines are all together. And now that we have that in place, it takes about 5 minutes to run that automation piece. We upload it to MarkLogic, and 5 minutes later, we're able to visualize the data.
Yeah. And one other thing that was kind of interesting, we heard this joke, which kind of fits into what we're doing, is two men were examining the output of a new computer in their department, and after an hour or so of analyzing the data, one of them remarked, "Do you realize it would take 400 men at least 250 years to make a mistake this big?" So we kind of saw this joke in passing, and we thought, wow, they're talking about us and what we're doing. So really just to highlight, a lot of these solutions, they're very lightweight, just like what Nate was talking about, the PowerShell script. It's right there on your OS. It's sitting there. And when he started, was a PowerShell novice. I mean, it was his first time really doing something beyond Google searching, how do I run this script and execute it? So a lot of these lightweight solutions are out there, and really there's not a whole lot of resources to be spent on some of these solutions or pieces that can help integrate with the way you can do different things with your data. Really the biggest thing is finding the right platform or means to build around and build your data strategy. And for us, really, we looked back on everything, and we kept our eyes to the strategy of the organization, the vision of the director. And so we kept that very much in tune to how we were dealing with data, because we wanted to know where the organization was going. And that was telling us exactly where they were going to take it and what data requirements were coming our way. And so that really helped us position both our data model, both our data validation efforts and our efforts to transform existing data and bring in new data sets to really grab the context that fit the vision that they were talking about.
One of the interesting pieces to sort of highlight there is being able to ask your data certain questions, but a lot of times you don't know everything up front that you want to be able to ask. And in some cases that you've been able to turn around response times to questions that you hadn't previously thought of into a quick, 5 minute turnaround. Is that an experience you can share?
Absolutely. So we get some data calls, and they ask for a particular, can you find a correlation, or we're looking for this. And before it was, we had to get things together. So we are experiencing a positive trend in this, in that we're able to turn those around very quickly. In fact, it's really as quick as writing the query for that data and to present that view. And in fact, we were in the beginning of this, and we had a request for information, and we started conducting the analysis, and we queried the information. And what was amazing was the trend jumped out at us, and the exact methods for alerting that we plan on using would have worked as well. And so that's definitely something that we identified, that the strategies that we are using to really to move forward with our data and information are working, and they're in the right place, because they would have identified those items as well. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So as you were going through the process and looking for the technologies, what other technologies did you previously try, and then how did they perform with your data challenges?
Okay. So first and foremost, we came into this organization in, as I was describing it, as a state of organizational change. One of the most telling items is that reorganization was actually splitting an organization and then beefing up another organization, which was ours, to add in more threat, security, cyber threat emulation, and different things that we were going to do moving forward. So there's these new data sets, which were ripe for brand new silos. And so there was that. And then we're looking at how do we deal with this, and how do we deal with this rate of change, the velocity and the variety of data. And so, as well as the potential for volume. And in doing that, we looked at different items. We had lost, because of the reorganization and because of resources, they had lost a platform, a system that was decided to sunset. So when those resources decisions are made in any large agency, sometimes they don't look at the second order of effect, third order effect, and magnitude. And so we lost that platform. So the organization had to recover that data. And so we were forced to use desktop applications with large amounts of data, which is never a good thing. And so that clearly was not a good long-term solution. So we knew we wanted to move to something, but rather than knee-jerk reaction, we moved to one way. We wanted to look at the problem and really decide what met our challenges. And because of the volume, the variety, and velocity of data, we opted to choose using MarkLogic because it gave us, in the NoSQL platform, a way to handle those three in a very healthy way towards what our mission was doing. At the time, we knew we were moving to that pen testing, potentially big data, moving from a lot of data, large quantities of data into the big data realm, as well as just the speed of change. Things were changing rapidly. We were in phase 4 of CCRI. They were talking about CCRI 2.0. Next thing you know, we're talking CCORI. So there's just change everywhere. There's all these new technologies, new data sets. And so for us, that was a huge thing. We also used some ACL analytics. That was a piece of software that we had from another mission set that was related to our organization. And while that provided us good ability to do certain things with data, it was certainly not going to solve our issues of aggregation or help us with our silo issues. It was just merely going to help us look at our data a different way. So as I mentioned, our organization decided to go with a NoSQL. The other organization broke off, actually decided to move towards a SQL Server. And I think they're just starting to move their platform in a direction. So we've definitely seen the ability to move faster, in the comparison. Now, some of that might be related to acquisitions or other items, but I mean, the key here is that we were able to really distill down the data and get insightful information out of it very quickly, and we were able to adapt from this really chaotic situation into a very organized situation where our data is put together, in a way that we can extract meaningful information very quickly.
Operational use, effectiveness, right?
Absolutely.
Great. What does the future hold for your program? Where do you want to go?
Well, like Chuck was talking about, this new operational readiness inspection, it has a lot more moving pieces. We do mission decomposition and some red team type penetration testing, and it brings a lot of other tools. So the capability of semantic triples is really neat, to be able to infer connections and visualize it in a way that we haven't seen before. And then we also are making partnerships with different agencies within the government. They do their own kinds of inspections. So we can start finding out their inspection results and mapping it to ours and trying to do a simulated scoring in advance to try to optimize our scheduling and resources where it's best used. And then I think the biggest change for our organization is going to be trying to keep silos from creeping up again. We have this analogy of, we have all these data puddles, we're bucketing water back and forth between the puddles. And what we would like to have is a data stream where information flows between different business processes and phases along a timeline. So there's a reduced possibility of conflicting information, the same information being added from different sources. So for us, the phase starts at site selection, and then it goes into pre-inspection scoping, trying to find out what kind of assets are at the site and what their mission is. And then during the inspection, it has to flow between the different threat, mission, and vulnerability components. And then we'd like all that information to flow into our analysis, follow-up, and predictive analysis for site selection in the future. And one more piece that could be useful is the ACID transactions once we get into operational processes.
Absolutely. I mean, the future for us, really, part of it we know and we've mapped out, right? We've mapped out that there's these data sets that we have, there's these processes, so we're turning off old inefficient processes or silo after silo. So far we've been very successful in really gaining some efficiencies for our organization that were there because the silos and the processes sort of helped create them. And so the stream, as Nate was talking about it, running through our process is keeping that information, keeping the redundancy out of our data to making sure that it's interconnected. So for us, the future is we want to prevent that from happening, as well as we want to prepare for these different data sets. So we're kind of keeping our ears to the ground and eyes to the sky on this, and really just finding out what insight we can determine. So we've been looking at different things from the NASCAR, I don't know what that stands for, but essentially it's the adversarial framework and the heat mapping of threat intelligence. And so the key here for us is there's all these available data sets and these programs within the department that offer some insight. And so the future is about unlocking the potential of really not just our data, but other data that we can bring in. So there's these different data sets that exist. And so being able to ingest those data sets and then compare our inspections or information or relate to those data sets really gives us another way to add insight and really, if you will, future-proofs us for the changes that are coming in the cyber area. So I think we can't exactly predict all the changes because we know that we're just so ripe for change, but at the same time, the good thing is the platform so far has been so adaptable for us. As it comes to us, we look at it and we find a smart way to include the next set of data or the next thing that they bring to us to want to relate.
It's great, the flexibility for growth there. So now we can turn over for audience questions. And so I'll go ahead and I'll have some that are coming up. So we'll start with, how do you ensure that the integrated data is high quality, accurate, relevant, credible, and timely?
So I can talk to data quality.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how many mistakes there could be with manual intervention. There's 6 different ways to spell technology. So a lot of this is just while we still have our data puddles or silos, is that we have to make good use of I made good use of regular expressions. Just guessing at which piece of technology that word is normally in every variation. So we do a lot with pre-processing, but what we're moving towards is input validation and having the single data set for the back end with multiple front ends that capture and share data between business processes. You want to add to that?
Yeah, the one thing I want to add is that with data quality in any of these, the biggest thing is to take a minute to understand it and then to get started with something, right? The perfect solution, you can't really wait for perfect because you need your managers, leaders, they want something, and they typically want it now, right? At the same time, you can build on it because you still have all your raw data points. So I think one of the things for us with determining data quality and moving towards that is to really think about the problem, come up with the level 1 solution, process the information, get the available insight, and then think about the problem again. Now, at the same time, that also, every time we do it, it yields another result. We improve upon that. We can automate something that was manual. We can check something that was, there was a connection between 2 or 3 pieces of information. So each time the quality goes up. But what's nice about the platform and the scripts that we're using is we can reprocess everything. So we can reprocess it with the next level of quality. So we can reprocess raw data files and then re-ingest. And so then we can we're essentially stair-stepping our quality up one step at a time as we continue to learn from it. So that's been an effective mechanism for us to really solve the problems as they go and just to keep on that steady trend, a broad brushstroke from silos and low quality to connected 360-degree view and high quality. So for us, it's that broad brushstroke up. Mistakes, learning mechanisms, things that happen in between, but the broad brushstroke is exactly where we're headed.
Okay. Here's another question from the audience. If you can give some examples of the insights that were identified or extracted through breaking the barriers of silos.
First of all, I'll talk about one quickly, and how many redundant processes became of silos. I will I'm going to give a little dirty laundry here, but essentially in inspections, you put all your inspection findings in an inspection application to help generate a report. And so you have your data over here, and then you're able to pull that as an XML. You have all your raw files, but you're not using your raw files you're hand jamming things in. But then you have a report that is a scores report that they want to get out quickly. So in order to get it out quickly, you're hand jamming it in there. But then there's another database over here that you have to put the scores in over here so you can do that. But then you got to compare all three and get them all together. And we just want, that's nonsense. That's just not smart. You're spending lots and lots of effort. So for us, some of the examples are really to identify these non-value added steps and distill down where is your data origination source. And if you have to have to for some operational need, then you can accept that. But at the same time, not allowing it to layer over here, and this person's job is to do this Excel spreadsheet, and this one's going to do this Access database, and this person's going to go put it on SharePoint, just determining really the flow of the data and getting rid of those inefficiencies for us is really, and then as we identify those silos, we shut them down in the redundant silos. Okay. And I imagine you have some things to add on that.
Yeah, I think probably getting at processes is the biggest thing with data integration. Is there's a lot of duplicate effort, like you were pointing out. But then we can also, as we have more time to spend on analysis, it changes things too, because we're able to dive into the data and pull out, information based on our hunches or anybody else's that come in requests and get it quickly.
Okay. So here's another question from the audience. Sensitive data is inherently siloed. Have you been able to overcome this at the interagency level to extract insights?
We're starting to. Yeah, we're partnering with a number of other agencies, and we're starting to share our source data files and check to see how we can have some cross-pollination.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, within the Department of Defense, there's different types of cyber assessments. NSA does some related to, I think it's Executive Order 13587. And so we're partnering with them to share data and information both at the raw level, because up to this point, a lot of information that was in DRSI reports was used by NSA, but they were hand jamming parts of our information. So first of all, we're solving someone else's data silo and data quality with the partnership, as well as we're sharing information with them. And then we're taking these partnerships and information sharing to all different levels, in that everything's on the table, from threat intelligence to just any available data set. And furthermore, we operate on multiple classifications now. At this point, we're in 2 classification levels, and we're moving to a 3rd shortly. So we've also worked those barriers in that a lot of this information is just not available at one classification or another, and so we're able to handle that by having the platform on multiple classifications, so we can take the data from the data origination source at the classification it's at. Of course, we can't go down, so we go up, and then we can do meaningful insights at that higher level with those pieces of information.
Okay, just a few more minutes. How has prescriptive analytics been incorporated into your work to extract data from siloed data? Do you think you're quite there yet, or is that something that sort of goes more towards the future?
So we're moving in that direction. It was interesting because as we were working with our analytics and working with the looks that we wanted to incorporate into basically the reporting for senior leaders, we were working an item, and then a request came in for an item. And that request was looking for a certain item. And as soon as we queried it, we went, yep, there's a trend line there. And so basically for us, we get it all into one place. So now we've got this potential for a 360 view. So before just getting it there, So I'm going to refer to this as, before it was a data pool. We had to pull it. We had to do this work to yank all the right data in the right spot. Now it's a data pool, P-O-O-L, where we pooled all of our data. So now it's in this pool, and so now we can do a lot more with it. So really, it could be asking the right queries, or really for us, using the right plugins, APIs, and really the options that we're giving ourselves to select different items, and as well as options to set MarkLogic up to alert us. So we're at that stage now where we're looking at different ways that we can query and filter and set up alerts. So as soon as a trend line begins forming, we get an alert that says, hey, you may want to keep your eyes on this. And so then we look at it, and then we're going to move towards the direction of building analytics against these items for these possible trend lines.
I think we're down to the last question, and in case we do run out of time, Nathan and Chuck are here for a few minutes afterwards, so when you're out, see them out in the food area, please feel free to ask them some questions, because we're not going to be able to get to all of them. So the last question, let's see here. Let me make sure. Eliminating silos within an organization is beneficial for the respective organization. How are you eliminating the silos that exist between orgs in order to better inform federal level decisions?
I think that's what the executive order was about, right? 580.
So partially, however, we haven't been very shy about reaching out to both JFHU Doden, US Cyber Command, DHS. After this, we're going to visit APL. So this afternoon we'll be with APL at Johns Hopkins. And so really for us, it's really about reaching out with all these different areas. And so we're not going to do this in a silo. We're going to be anti-silo in our approach. So down to how we communicate and we partner, obviously within all the good rules for information, but and need to know. However, we are sharing the information about what we're doing, and we're also sharing insights and receiving insights from others. And really, so it's really those mutual partnerships that are helping us with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it.